everyone. All right, so today I want to delve into all the questions that you may have when you start researching Kangen and these other water ionizers. And, you know, a lot of people even intuitively have this big question mark, is this a hoax? Is this for real? Is it worth the price point? That's a big question, right? And I'm hoping to clear up some things and help you understand the science a little bit better, and maybe come to some conclusions that I have, maybe. So let's dive in. Okay. So here is the big thing. I'm going to just reveal the ultimate conclusion, really, right at the beginning. And then I'm going to kind of reverse engineer it a little bit and help you guys understand how we got there. Okay. So the conclusion that I've come to, and I almost became a rep for Kangen, and then I almost became a rep for Tyant, because I realized Tyant at least has a really good water filter as part of it. And, it kind of weirded me out that people would spend thousands of dollars on a Kangen water ionizer and not have any kind of filtration worth anything on the thing. Why would you add electricity to potentially poor water sources to begin with? So I started leaning towards Tyant, and then all of a sudden I came across all of this and I realized I was about to make a big mistake. So, in Japan, in the 80s, people got really into water ionizers, and they ended up doing some backtracking. After they tried to understand and study and really get to the bottom of it, there was a lot of speculation about why this process of electrolysis was producing therapeutic results in people. There was no denying that people were having benefit, but they really didn't understand why. And it led people to kind of just leave this blank to fill in, and they said, well, it must be the alkalinity. So since then, there have been numerous studies, including, in Japan, showing, and I will, show you guys a lot of this if you go to ripple.effect.water.frequency on Instagram and, follow me there. You can start, getting exposed to some of the specifics around this and seeing some of these studies and things like that. But suffice it to say that what they've concluded is actually the therapeutic value of these water ionizers is in the hydrogen produced. Okay. So, all right, if that's the case, and what they realized, and they've studied, in fact, is that when you removed the hydrogen and did not change anything else of the ionized water, the therapeutic benefits were eliminated. Okay. So, the thing with alkalinity is, I've been into Weston A. Price for a long time, and if you don't know who he is, look him up. He was a dentist in the 30s. Even if you're not into meat eating, his work is very well worth studying. He did a lot of documentation, a lot of study on indigenous cultures around the world at the advent of Westernization. So in other words, he was able to see the distinct difference between populations of indigenous people who were eating their traditional indigenous diet versus even a percentage of their calories coming from modern white man type food, okay? White flour, white sugar, canned goods. And without getting too much into that, I find it really interesting that even back in the 30s, okay, he wrote about the myth of alkaline diet. He has a very lovely excerpt in his book. His book is called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. He has a lovely excerpt about alkaline diet and how it's a fad these days. And I just crack up reading that because I'm like, God, it's still happening, And he was like, look, if you look at the healthiest indigenous populations around the world, they have no dental cavities. They have these nice wide jaw structures, so they can fit all their teeth. There's no crowding and so on. And they're very stout people. Some of them even have like 22 children without losing a single tooth. Okay, excuse me. That's health right there. Okay. What you find is that they all have a higher amount of so-called acidic foods than non-acidic foods. Well, he's like, look, this whole thing is just kind of silly, because actually what makes a food alkaline is the mineral content. And essentially what he was saying is this whole thing is a myth. Alkaline food is not better for you. High mineral content is great, but you also need to have a balanced diet of, you know, what he would say, some animal foods, some fats, some really good animal fats, and so on and so forth. He was a huge proponent of cod liver oil and high vitamin butter oil and so on and so forth. So without getting, I'm like skipping gears a little bit, because I'm like, you know, this is a whole other avenue that I could get into. But the point being, alkalinity is a little bit of a misunderstood concept. And when it comes to alkaline water, especially, you know, water that has been alkalized through electrolysis, as these ionizers do, they are not going to act as a buffer. Okay. Baking soda, okay, a truly alkaline substance, if you add it to water or to blood, for example, okay, and then you add a little bit of acid to it, some lemon juice, whatever, it is going to fight to keep that water alkaline. It is a buffer, okay? It will buffer against, protect against acidification. Alkaline water, alkalinized water is not a buffer. So the second you add any amount of acid, aka what? Stomach acid, okay? The second that water goes down your gullet and into that stomach acid, it is going to be neutralized. It's no longer alkaline, okay? You might have like a second that it's going through your, you know, throat, that there's some alkaline water connection happening with your tissues. But aside from that, the second it enters your system, it's going to be neutralized, okay? And there is some evidence showing also that those who drink a ton of this alkalized water actually end up with alkalosis. And, you know, even Weston A. Price spoke to this, that alkalosis symptoms often look a lot like acidosis symptoms, okay? Joint pain, you know, some of these symptoms that traditional, you know, kind of hyped up alkaline diet faddists will say have to do with acidity in the body. Oh, you're acidic. Actually can be signs of alkalosis as well, of too much alkalinity. Okay, so this is a really, really important piece to understand, and to understand that, you know, even if drinking this water or eating this food had some kind of effect on our body, the blood, our body has a very specific range of acidity that the blood needs to remain in. And if the blood actually becomes too alkaline, it leads to death. Okay, so when we are nearing that alkaline state in terms of blood alkalinity, we are getting closer and closer to death. A chronically, you know, a person with terminal cancer is going to have a more alkaline blood. And by the time they die, that blood alkalinity is going to be like a 9 or something like that. Okay. So actually the body tries to maintain this very specific homeostasis, and we don't, there's no benefit, you know, scientifically for having excess alkalinity in the system. Okay. That's just I could go on and on and on about this subject, but that's the gist of it. Okay, so now let's take it a step further and understand ionizers and what this is really, what this hype is all about, and why are people having benefits? Okay, because people are having some wonderful, healing benefits from alkaline water, ionized alkaline water. Okay, so I'm going to go through this piece by piece. All right. First of all, we need to understand that ionizers, their ability to produce hydrogen gas. So we're past the discussion about alkalinity, okay? It is already very scientifically factual. We have already established, if we look at the science, it is established fact, okay, that the alkalinity is not the therapeutic benefit in these ionizers, okay? So it's the hydrogen. So let's talk about the hydrogen now. So the source water and its mineral content, which is called the TDS, the total dissolved solids, okay, it's everything, okay? The ability to produce hydrogen for these ionizers is incredibly dependent on the source water, because that mineral content is actually what ultimately is producing that conductivity that's necessary to create that hydrogen gas. So there's no, because of this, you can't really get a standard amount of hydrogen produced from, a Kangen or a tie-in water machine across the board, because it's going to depend on the water that people are putting into it. Now, it also does not have the ability to dissolve that hydrogen into the water without creating bubbles, big bubbles that are not absorbable and not actually useful, okay? So a lot of people think their ionizer is working really well because it's producing all this cloudy, bubbly stuff. And actually that's a sign that it's not doing so well, because as you'll see, I'll bring my hydrogen water over here at the end. When it's really working, it's clear. It's so tiny and dissolved in there that the water ends up clear, except while it's bubbling and creating it. But once it's suspended in there and the cycle ends, the water itself is clear. So basically, they're relying on turbulence to kind of create this hydrogen, but it's not very effective, okay? And it has to run over these plates, and there's a lot of discussion about plates and whether it's good to have, plates with holes in them or smooth plates and yada yada. But the reality is that the amount of hydrogen that actually is maintained, it can produce a certain amount. So you can look at the ORP rating and kind of how much hydrogen has been produced, but that's not actually equating to, first of all, even a very high amount, because actually the ORP will go down into the negatives very easily with even the tiniest bit of hydrogen. And that is not really indicative of how much is available and suspended and not just instantly evaporating, because when you have these big bubbles, they're just going to pop. And hydrogen does not stay, even in the best case scenario, it really doesn't stay in water very long. It's the smallest molecule, okay? It's tiny. And that's why it's so amazing, because it can get into the tiniest parts of our body, the tip of our fingers, all of those little capillary beds, all of the tiniest parts into the cell. It can go into the cell and do all this amazing magic inside the cell. It can get through the blood-brain barrier, okay? It can do all these amazing things because it's so small. But because of that, if you have it in even a glass, or my light just turns off on its own, it will dissolve. It will, even if you have it in a bottle, it will eventually just dissipate through the walls of the bottle, okay? Okay. So essentially, what we have then is that probably 90% of the hydrogen dissipates through this process, because these bubbles get so big. And why is that? because there is so much voltage running through this water. And this is why ultimately having a bottle like mine where the voltage is kept as low as possible and the alkalinity is not affected is the best, okay? We have the very lowest voltage. We're not creating hydrogen bubbles that are going to just dissipate. And so we can end up with the greatest concentration of molecular hydrogen suspended in the water and keeping it there for the longest time possible, at least half an hour. It'll start dissipating. You want to drink this pretty immediately, but it will stay there for long enough for you to get it into your body and for it to do its work. Okay, so that's really crucial. So obviously some is getting into this water, and obviously people are having some wonderful healing benefits. But here's the other problem. Aside from the fact that, can you imagine if you were getting 90% more hydrogen, okay, in your water? Imagine 90% more therapeutic benefits. That's huge. If you're already getting therapeutic benefits from this much, imagine how much deeper it can go, okay? But also, over time, that benefit is going to go down. And this is why a lot of people express that, at first they were getting all this amazing benefit, and then after a while, they were just like, I don't know if it's really working anymore. But I'm seeing bubbles, so it must, right? It's all cloudy. Well, maybe not, right? Maybe that's not the indicator that it's working. So, without getting too deep into it, the important piece is to understand that, whether you have a mesh plate or a smooth plate, ultimately, the mesh plate does have more surface area. It may be better, okay? But over time, because that pH is so high, anything above 8.4 pH or so, the calcium in the water, calcium carbonate, is going to precipitate out. And what that's going to do is create, this film on the plates and prevent hydrogen production, okay? It's specifically going to diminish your hydrogen production over time. So, especially if you have a higher TDS water, which is good, okay, because it has those electrolytic minerals, the electrolytes, calcium, magnesium, right? These are electrolytic minerals, which happen to be alkaline minerals as well. So the higher TDS water is going to produce more hydrogen at first, but it's also going to cause more deposits and diminish the hydrogen production over time. So, we talked about voltage and, essentially this all combines to create a situation where there's a little bit of hydrogen production happening. It's not the best, could have been better. Over time, it goes down. And for some people and some, depending on their source water and depending on how soon that water machine starts to, develop these issues with producing hydrogen, and even depending on just the flow rate of the water over those plates and the way in which it hits them, it's like it has to hit in just the right way to actually produce molecular hydrogen and suspend it in the water. It's like this very minute range, that it has to be in. And so some ionizers are never going to produce very much hydrogen in the first place. Or if they do, it's going to be in these big bubbles that pop, and they never really have therapeutic value. So, ORP is really not the most useful, and it's certainly not the only way that we can measure the therapeutic value of our water. So all this, okay, at the end of the day, just looking at my notes here because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. You know, how do we then choose a device that does produce more molecular hydrogen and does it safely and effectively and so on? Because there are a lot out there, and you can find even today on Amazon a $50 hydrogen water bottle, and I'll tell you something, it is not only likely to be very ineffective. Here's my water. Okay, see how clear it is now? A few remaining bubbles, but crystal clear, okay? This has absolutely changed my life, by the way, and that's why I'm so passionate. This is not just something that I'm in for the money. It has majorly changed my life. I have dealt with chronic Lyme disease, mold toxicity, chronic pain from arthritis due to the Lyme disease. It's been a long journey. And this right here has changed my life probably more than anything, or it's definitely right up there with PEMF technology. But honestly, probably more than anything, this has utterly changed my trajectory of my health. So, all right. Choosing a device because of this is really a nuanced conversation. And there's a reason that I have chosen this one, and I will put the link in the comments, but having that low voltage, very, very big. It will help produce hydrogen that actually can be small enough to be suspended in the water and remain there and not just instantly dissipate out. The type of electrodes is really important, and this is why you don't want to go for cheap imitations, okay? Because a lot of these cheaper bottles, the electrodes are going to leach metals, okay? So we are using, you know, titanium, platinum coated, that is not going to leach into the water. And also because of the low voltage, there's less chance of leaching. And there's also, you know, with some of these others, there is a higher likelihood of some not so beneficial byproducts, like bleach, okay? Like there's things that get created because of the voltage that are not beneficial for our body. So that's something that this company has mitigated, big time studied, and he's, you know, studied like 100 different devices. Okay, he's compared them all, he took them all apart, really delved into it in depth. The quality of the membrane. Okay, so instead of these plates, that may or may not produce hydrogen, what we have is a PEM, okay, a membrane. And DuPont is considered the best on the market, but it's expensive. And what our creator ended up finding, he was able to just rip the DuPont membrane in half. He was like, this is still just not, it's not optimal. And that's considered the top of the line. So he created his own proprietary membrane that was not able to rip in half, and it is very good. It is top of the line. And it's part of the price point, but what it means too is that you are going to, you're going to be able to use this for years to come, and it's going to maintain its, you know, hydrogen producing capacity. The membrane is what goes between the anode and the cathode to basically allow hydrogen but nothing else to come through. So it has to be very, you know, fine, allowing this tiny molecule but none of the harmful byproducts to go through into, you know, the water that you're going to drink ultimately. So really, really important stuff, you know, and ultimately the concentration of hydrogen, which we can actually test at home with a hydrogen reagent, okay, it's incredibly high and it remains in the water. You know, this is another thing that our creator, Nuno, tested and found that even if certain ones create some hydrogen, a lot of them after 10 seconds, it's gone. So if you don't gulp it down instantly, it's gone. So it has to be able to contain the hydrogen for at least a period of time, you know, half an hour is, you know, pretty good. And he's actually working even on, he's already created it, okay, a bag that you can put the water in that will maintain it for days, okay, that just the hydrogen doesn't dissipate out of. But that's incredibly difficult to create. I mean, it's not something that typically can be done easily because, again, hydrogen is so, so tiny. It will go through the blood-brain barrier. It will go through a thick glass. You know, this is not glass. It's medical grade plastic. So no leaching, no BPA, none of that crap. You know, so we don't want these byproducts, the chlorine and so on and so forth. We certainly don't want the bleach product that is present in Kangen water machines that actually helps create the whole system. You know, we want something that is safe and effective, you know, and that is what this bottle really, really is. What else? You know, this has very little product is created, but it also has a discharge system. So on the bottom, there is a space for any harmful byproducts to leak out. So they do have, you know, safety valves and stuff like that. And complete separation of the cavity, you know, so, you know, again, we talked about the PEM, the proton exchange membrane, okay, which will last at least 7 years, okay, so really long life on these, and by the time 7 years comes around, they probably will have even improved it, and it'll be like, we'll be ready to get the next level. So anything else? I think, you know, aside from that, what I love about this bottle too is that he's put magnets in the bottom that, in the base that you can actually take off, okay, that emulate the magnetism of the earth. And then in the lid, which you can also take off and use even over your food to charge your food, there are 3 settings, okay? Let me show you. Energy, recovery, and lumivite. So lumivite is the frequency that emulates sunlight. So when you use that with the earth magnets, it's like you have your own little terrarium. The water is inside its own living biome, you know? But you also have an energy and recovery. And I will get into this in some other videos, just in depth, looking at what is oxidation, what is reduction, redox, okay? Why do we need both of them? Oxidative stress, not a good thing, right? We've heard about that, but there's also reductive stress, okay? So we don't want an excess of the wrong kind of antioxidants. Hydrogen acts as an antioxidant, but it does so selectively. So that's really amazing and a huge part of why hydrogen is so profound in the body. It has the ability to mitigate oxidative stress, but only in the parts of the cell that need it. So a cell can have reductive stress and oxidative stress in different parts of its cell, okay? It's fascinating. We'll get into that way more in depth in some other videos, but I wanted to just, you know, at least give you the basic understanding of why these water ionizers are kind of, you know, frou-frou. And we're talking, okay, you know, this is a pretty penny. It's like a bit over $500 US, okay? but compare that to like $5,000 or even, you know, $4,000 or whatever deal you can get with Kangen or Tyant or any of these brands. That's a huge savings, right? Okay. For more hydrogen, you know, and infinitely less money. Okay. So, yeah, I hope that gives you, you know, a good basic understanding. Feel free to ask me questions. We can talk about some of these things more in depth. But I really, you know, I'm going to lay it on thick at this point because I've done my research. Like I said, I almost became a rep for Kangen and then Tyant. And then I was like, wait up. I'm so glad my gut told me to wait on the Kangen thing, you know, when people were pushing me to get into it. And I just, I wasn't sure. I was like, I need to do more research because if I'm going to get behind something, it's not because of the money, you know, and some people are really drawn to the money-making potential of that MLM. This has money-making potential. It is an MLM. They are, you know, operating in that way. They have a wonderful, you know, affiliate marketing program. But it's, you know, they don't have a non-compete clause. They are very ethical and incredible people. And their product is truly top of the line, you know, and instead of paying a marketing team, they're just paying us to market it. You know, I think people really have some misconceptions about MLMs too. And I really want to do a video on that too. But, you know, I want to be behind something 1000% and to be able to come at it from a place of education and understanding the science behind it. So I took my time and I am here to tell you, Kangen, your time is up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all my friends that are into it. Like, I have some lovely friends that are very, very obsessed with it, and I'm trying to just gently educate because, you know, I get it. And, you know, you can always switch teams. You can. And I think, you know, a true sign of intelligence really is being willing to receive new information and assimilate it and change your mind. You know, even if everything in your life was dedicated to this thing. And if someone can prove to me that this is wrong, I will drop it, you know. But until they can, I am trusting the science, and there is a lot of science on hydrogen. You know, follow the Molecular Hydrogen Institute. They're amazing as well. So I hope this was a good intro, and I will see you on my Instagram and my YouTube channel and my Facebook page and group. Come visit me there and learn more. All right.